Okay, so have you ever like really thought about aging? Like what if it wasn't just something we have to accept?
It's kind of wild, right? Like,
Like,
what if it's not some unbreakable law of nature?
that's what's so cool about this source we're diving into today. It's called The First Steps Toward Human Immortality Are Here. And it suggests that we might be able to like hit pause on getting older, maybe even rewind a bit.
Yeah, I mean, it really makes you question everything you thought you knew about aging.
Right. It starts by asking why we even age in the first place. Did you know, like, from an evolutionary perspective, once you've passed on your genes, nature kind of doesn't care how long you stick around?
It makes sense, I guess. Like, the main goal from an evolutionary standpoint is just to make sure your species keeps going, you know?
So once you've done your part to keep the species going, your individual lifespan doesn't really matter anymore. It's kind of harsh when you think about it that way.
Well, it's nature, right? But what's exciting is that science is now giving us a glimpse into the mechanisms behind aging, and it seems it might not be as set in stone as we once thought.
Exactly. This source dives deep into a bunch of new discoveries, and one of the key concepts it explores is something called the epigenetic clock. Can you break that down for us a bit?
Sure. So think of it like this. The epigenetic clock refers to changes in our DNA that, well, they kind of build up over time.
Oh, okay. So it's not like the actual genetic code is changing.
Right. The code itself stays the same, but it's how those genes are expressed that changes. It's almost as if someone's adding like sticky notes to a super complex instruction manual.
And those sticky notes mess things up over time.
Yeah. Over time, they can disrupt how cells function. And that leads to, the classic signs of aging, like wrinkles, weaker immune systems, and you become more susceptible to all sorts of diseases.
The source actually talked about a study where scientists were able to reverse some of these epigenetic changes, right? Something about Yamanaka factors.
Oh, yeah. Those are amazing. Yamanaka factors are basically a set of proteins that can, like, reprogram adult cells. They can make them act more youthful, almost like stem cells again.
So wait, are you telling me that scientists can actually rewind the clock on our cells? That's like something straight out of a sci-fi movie.
Well, science fiction is becoming reality. And it's not just theory. There was this study in 2020 where researchers actually used these Yamanaka factors to help mice who'd gone blind because of age-related issues. They were able to restore their vision.
Wow, that's incredible. So it's not just about slowing down aging. We might actually be able to reverse some of its effects.
That's the potential we're talking about. And it's not just Yamanaka factors either. The force also talks about other promising research avenues like senolytics.
Senolytics, huh? What are those?
So as we age, we accumulate these harmful cells that are basically like zombies. They're not functioning right, but they refuse to die off.
Zombie cells. That sounds creepy.
Yeah, it's a good analogy. They just hang out in our tissues, secreting all these inflammatory substances that contribute to, a bunch of age-related diseases. So senolytics are designed to specifically target and eliminate these zombie cells.
Makes sense. Get rid of the bad stuff so the good stuff can flourish. I also remember the source mentioning something about telomere extension as a potential way to combat aging. Can you explain what telomeres are and why they're so important?
Imagine you have shoelaces, and at the end of each lace, there's a little plastic tip to keep it from fraying, right? Telomeres are kind of like those tips, but for our chromosomes. Each time a cell divides, these telomeres get a bit shorter.
So eventually they get so short that the cell can't divide properly anymore, which is what contributes to aging.
Exactly. And that's where telomere extension therapies come in. They aim to protect or even lengthen those telomeres, basically slowing down that cellular clock.
It's wild how scientists are attacking this problem from all these different angles, but I gotta ask, is fixing aging really as simple as just tweaking a few genes or zapping some zombie cells?
Well, that's the thing. The human body is incredibly complex. It's not like a single machine that we can just tinker with. You have trillions of cells organized into all these intricate systems that are constantly interacting with each other.
So it's about more than just messing with a few genes here and there.
Right. We need to understand how all these systems work together and develop approaches that target aging as a whole, not just individual parts. We don't want to cause unintended consequences,
Yeah, definitely a delicate balancing act. It feels like we're on the verge of something huge, but there are also so many unknowns.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not just scientific challenges we have to consider. There are huge philosophical questions, too.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. Like, is it even ethical to try to extend human lifespans indefinitely? And if we could, what kind of impact would that have on society? I mean, this source also talked about something called digital immortality, right? Like uploading our consciousness into a computer.
All right, that's another mind-blowing concept.
Yeah.
It raises all sorts of questions about what it means to be human. Like, if we could create a digital copy of ourselves, would that really be us?
We've covered so much ground already, and it's clear that this is just the beginning of the conversation. Aging and the quest for immortality are such complex topics. There's so much to unpack, both scientifically and philosophically. We'll definitely need to explore this further, but for now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the potential implications of all these breakthroughs. What might a world without aging actually look like? It's wild to think that, like, wrinkles and all the other stuff we just accept as part of getting older might not be inevitable after all. If this research actually leads somewhere, what could that future look like?
That's where things get really interesting, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just try to picture a world where, say, 80-year-olds are out there running marathons and people are starting businesses when they're over 100 years old. Even how we think about family could change completely.
The source even mentioned a world where people might be starting families when they're like 150 years old. It's hard to wrap your head around what that kind of generational shift would even mean.
It would totally change how we think about family, the roles people play in society, and even just our perception of time itself. You could have several generations all actively shaping the world at the same time. It'd be this crazy blend of experience and fresh ideas. It's pretty hard to even imagine.
Definitely. It would shatter all our preconceived notions about what different life stages are supposed to look like. I mean, we always think about aging as this, like, loss of potential. But with all these advancements, maybe people could keep learning, growing, and making a difference for way longer.
Exactly. Imagine a world where people have decades, maybe even centuries, to truly master something, explore tons of different careers, or just, like, totally immerse themselves in learning. The possibilities for both personal and societal progress would be mind-blowing.
I bet some people might argue that life would lose its meaning if it didn't have an endpoint. Like, if we get rid of the whole time is running out thing, would people just become complacent and lose their drive?
It's a valid point, for sure. I mean, some philosophies suggest that knowing we're going to die is actually what gives life meaning. It pushes us to make the most of our limited time. But the source presents this other perspective, where maybe, instead of being afraid of death, we could choose when our story ends. So death wouldn't vanish, but it would be a choice, not just something inevitable.
So we'd be motivated by our own personal goals and desires, not this feeling that we have to rush because the clock's ticking. We'd live each day intentionally because we want to, not because we feel like we have to.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a total reframing of how we think about life and purpose. Imagine life without that built-in deadline. It'd be like this vast canvas stretching out for centuries, giving people the chance to truly chase their passions, try out different paths, and contribute to the world in ways we haven't even thought of yet.
It's an incredible idea, but let's be real for a second. A world with people living much longer lives raises all sorts of questions about resources and, wouldn't it lead to overpopulation? How do we make sure everyone has the basics like food, water, and energy if lifespans are measured in centuries?
The source tackles those issues head-on and points to things like advances in sustainable technology as part of the solution. We're already seeing progress with stuff like lab-grown meat, renewable energy, and better ways to manage water. Those kinds of innovations are going to be crucial for meeting the needs of a population that's both growing and living longer.
I see your point. But even with those solutions, how do we make sure these life-extending technologies don't just become something only rich people can afford? Wouldn't that just worsen the inequality we already have?
That's a crucial issue. The source is very clear that radical life extension should be a public good, something everyone has access to, not just the wealthy.
Kind of like how we think about essential things like healthcare or education.
Right, exactly. Think about vaccines or antibiotics. Those were once cutting-edge, expensive treatments, but now they're available to pretty much everyone. The goal should be to make these anti-aging treatments accessible to all so that the benefits are widespread.
It's good to hear that those ethical aspects are being considered, but even if we sort out all those challenges, is there a chance that by messing with the aging process, we're disrupting the natural order of things? Could there be unintended consequences we haven't even thought of?
It's a valid concern, and scientists and ethicists are definitely wrestling with it. Whenever you start tinkering with these fundamental biological processes, there's always the risk of unintended consequences. The source acknowledges those risks, though, and stresses the need for really careful research, rigorous testing, and constant monitoring to make sure we're not causing any unforeseen harm.
Sounds like we need to be really careful and strategic about this. push the limits of what's possible, but always with an awareness of the potential risks and benefits.
Totally. It's a tricky balance to strike. But the potential benefits of this research are so huge that it feels irresponsible not to explore them, as long as we do it responsibly.
You know, it's funny, but one of the most fascinating and potentially disruptive areas we've touched on is that idea of digital immortality. It's mind-boggling to think that we might one day be able to upload our consciousness into a computer.
I know, right? It stretches the very definition of what it means to be human. It raises these fundamental questions about consciousness, identity, and even just the nature of existence.
Like, if we could create a digital copy of ourselves, would that really be us? Would it have our memories, personality, our essence?
These are questions philosophers have been debating for ages. And now, with digital consciousness becoming a real possibility, they're more relevant than ever.
We've explored so much in this discussion, from the nitty-gritty of cellular biology to the mind-blowing possibilities of extending lifespans and even digital consciousness. It's been a wild ride.
Totally. And it's clear that this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the conversation about aging and immortality. As science keeps moving forward, we'll be faced with all sorts of new possibilities and challenges, and it'll be up to us to navigate those responsibly.
It's a future full of both uncertainty and incredible potential. And I think as we move forward, it's so important to remember that the goal isn't just about living longer lives. It's about living better lives, reaching our full potential, and creating a world where everyone has the chance to thrive, no matter how long their life might be. What do you all think about all this? Share your reactions and thoughts on our social media channels. This is a conversation that needs to keep going, and we want to hear from you.
So we've been talking about some pretty wild stuff, like, rewinding the aging process, living way longer, even like uploading our minds to computers. But what does all this research mean for someone who's not necessarily trying to live for hundreds of years? Yeah, that's a good point. Even if someone isn't personally interested in, like, radical life extension, the technologies that are being developed to fight aging have implications that go way beyond just living longer.
So it's not just about quantity of life, it's also about quality.
Exactly. They have the potential to really revolutionize healthcare and even other industries.
Okay. I'm curious, can you give us some examples?
Sure. Take CRISPR gene editing, for example. Initially, it was explored as a way to potentially, tweak genes related to aging. But now, it's being used to develop totally groundbreaking treatments for genetic diseases. It's giving hope to people with conditions that were basically considered incurable before.
So basically, the quest for immortality is leading to discoveries that could benefit everyone, no matter how old they are.
Exactly. And it goes beyond just medicine. These breakthroughs are also transforming agriculture, energy production, even material science. The pursuit of longevity is driving innovation that's improving everyone's quality of life, not just people who are trying to extend their lifespans.
I see what you mean. So it's like this ripple effect, right? Each scientific breakthrough kind of opens up all these new possibilities in areas you might not even expect.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's really pushing the boundaries of science and technology. And those advancements have ripple effects that extend far beyond the original goal.
So this research isn't just about adding years to our lives. It's about adding life to our years.
I love that. It really gets at what this whole source is about. It's not just a scientific exploration.
Yeah.
It's also a philosophical one. If we really could live way longer than we ever imagined, how would that change how we think about everything? Our lives, our purpose, what it means to even be human.
Yeah, that's a deep. It makes you wonder. Would we approach our careers, our relationships, even our personal goals differently if we knew we had centuries, not just decades, to figure things out?
It really forces us to examine our priorities. What's truly important in the grand scheme of things. It makes us confront our own mortality and grapple with these big existential questions that have been puzzling philosophers forever.
Wow, this deep dive has given us a lot to chew on. We've covered so much ground, from the tiny details of cells to the massive philosophical implications of longer lifespans and even, the idea of digital consciousness.
It's been quite a journey. And it's clear that the conversation about aging and immortality is really just getting started. As science keeps advancing, we're going to face a whole bunch of new possibilities and challenges, and it's up to us to figure out how to navigate them thoughtfully and responsibly.
It's a future full of so much potential, but also a lot of uncertainty. As we move forward, it's so important to remember that the ultimate goal isn't just to live longer, but to live better. To reach our full potential as humans and create a world where everyone has the opportunity to truly thrive, regardless of, how long or short their individual life might be. And that's it for this deep dive, but we want to hear what you think. Share your reactions and ideas with us on social media. This is a conversation that needs to keep going, and your perspective is super valuable.